Thank you for being with me today. Very excited to discuss with you about your experience as an expat. Without further ado, I was wondering if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, nice to be in touch. I think this is the power of the expat community, right? Yes, I am originally from New Zealand, but I think I have now officially lived more than half of my life overseas. And so I very randomly, and your questions have got me thinking why. I applied for a job via a newspaper, that's how many years ago it was, for teaching English in Japan. And what I remember is I had the worst job interview ever. I came away thinking, I don't know anything. Like the questions the guy asked me, I just sat there and went, and then surprisingly got offered the job, and then had this huge decision of like, oh, now what do I do? But obviously when opportunities come to you, you can't turn them down, right? And so I very bravely and petrified packed my bags and left New Zealand at the grand old age of sort of 2021. And like I said, I haven't been back since. So I had a couple of years in Japan. I went across to China to visit my parents who were living there at the time, with the idea of visiting for a couple of weeks. 8 years later, I left with my now husband. And so I think also thanks to him, and I guess thanks to our open-mindedness is what I guess it is, we moved with his company to those other locations. So he was with shipping. So we moved to Russia, Sweden, where else? Russia, Sweden, India, and came to Dubai. Yeah, we've been here for 16 years now.
Wow. Yes, that's very impressive. Honestly, I was a bit feeling dreamy when I saw about all these experiences. It's very rich. And when throughout all this experience in different country, is there a place where you felt easier to integrate out of curiosity, or a place where the cultural shock was stronger and it felt harder to integrate?
Yeah, it's a common question, I guess, and I still don't really know the answer, because I don't know how much is where you are as a person. And what the locations are, and obviously sort of things change over 20 years. I mean, I guess Dubai is by far the easiest, but also unusually it's not a very supportive expat network, because the majority of people living here are foreign. So in a strange way, I think Russia and India were very difficult to live in, but the expat community was so supportive and so tight. You felt very safe, and you could ask any questions and find out anything, because everybody realized or appreciated that it was difficult to be a foreign living there. Right. And then it's your sort of personal experiences, where you are in your life, as to what that particular city offered. So yeah, tricky question, but yeah, Dubai by far the easiest in terms of just things work, and there's roads, and there's English speaking, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think it's a very good point. I was actually going to lean on that as another question, but it's what would what kind of lessons you've learned to make your expatriation easier when you go to a new country? What are the things you can do to make it easier, because you've lived it so many times?
Yeah, sure. Well, these days you have social media, right? Oh my God, I sound so old. These days, but honestly, I think researching and finding out as much as you can. So now we have Facebook for older people, but everywhere has a Facebook group. And again, and I think genuinely people like to be helpful. So I would say don't be shy in asking a question, because somebody will love to give you an answer. You ask a question on a Facebook group and you probably get 50 answers, in which case you need to sort of read between the lines. But like I say, generally people I think are very willing to share their experiences, where they've been, what's worked, and help a newbie, if you like. Absolutely. So I would say, I mean, I think the other thing I would say is manage your expectations. I think moving moving is a big deal. There's a lot to learn. It's a big hurdle. It's emotional. It's exciting. It's cool. It's fun. The next day it's emotional. You know what I mean? So sort of give yourself that permission to be a bit up and down. And yeah, and some days you just sort of think, oh my God, what have we done? And then other days it's like, oh, this is so cool. And you're out sort of meeting people and you know, at the various coffee mornings or business groups or whatever it is that you know, that you want to participate in. And yeah, I just think don't be shy to ask questions or ask for help.
Absolutely. And another question that I had was about your really personal own experience, because I know you've been traveling with your partner and now your family, but we touched in the past interviews that I did around the expat community about that crisis of identity. It sounds very strong, but that it's actually true that we can experience when we go abroad, because as you just said, it's also intense. It's not just fun. So I was wondering if you personally ever felt that, if you felt it again and again, or if how has been.
Yeah, sure. Actually, well, it's funny. So I had sort of a business degree and whatever, and then went to China and kind of, and I would say accidentally, but again by keeping your eyes open, I ended up doing my master's degree in cross-cultural psychology, because this was sort of the late 90s. It was very interesting and quite relevant. And from that, I set up a telephone helpline, which called Lifeline, and it's still there 20 years later, which is very cool. But it's a telephone helpline helping people, you know, with various questions and problems, and to vent sort of in a safe place. And the identity issue was very prominent, because often, you know, oh, hi, nice to meet you. This is my husband works for there, you know, or hi, nice to meet you. What does your husband do? So like, sorry, hello. you know, you are the trailing spouse. And with that comes no identity. You know, you sort of you can lose it. Whereas in your home country, you know, you had your life and your routine and the things that you had built. And again, and I think expat life is changing, but I'm talking a few years ago, where it might not have necessarily been an equal agreement. You know, maybe a husband was offered a job that, you know, quite literally couldn't refuse. Oh, so guess what, everybody, we're going to relocate to wherever. And there's not a huge amount of discussion or room for negotiation, really. You know, if you've been offered a job you can't refuse,
it's happening.
what is happening? What can you say? So maybe begrudgingly the trailing partner goes with the other family member, and then is already on a bit of a negative. I can't believe you're making me do this. You know, I don't want to. I've left my tennis club. I've left my job. I've left my, you know, the kids who are at school. Whatever. And suddenly it's out of your control. And I think when it's out of your control, you feel a bit resentful and a bit angry. So you go into your new place.
It's not the same. Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess that leans into something that I wanted to mention. I probably should have done it when we started, but I discovered your book. That's also how I discovered you, but I discovered your book in 2019, called Expat Confessions. And a very nice tool. I was wondering if we're in the middle of the topic, but if you wanted to talk a little bit about the book and what motivated you to write it.
Sure, that's So sort of everywhere I've lived, you sort of reinvent yourself by need, but I think mostly by desire. And I think to be a bit flexible and sort of look around and see what options there are, opportunities, and, you know, different people you meet have different, can offer different things to you. And in Sweden, I was doing some online writing, sort of expat stuff for various websites. And that Expat Woman website was I guess a precursor to like a helpline. So I don't know if you sort of, Aunt Agatha, the Dear Diary type things that people write into magazines. So the website was that, I've just moved to wherever, and I'm finding it hard to meet people. So then I would write sort of responses, and I guess this was a bit my psychology hat on. And then met another lady in Sweden who knew a lady in Australia. And we got together and she said, let's put these into a book. And so Andrew Martins and I created or wrote that Expat Confessions book. Yeah, it feels like many years ago. So that came about by just being around and having eyes open, and sort of being open to meeting people and talking about things. So
yeah, absolutely, that's very nice.
I mean, I guess it was never my intention. I never sort of woke up one day and thought, right, I'm writing a book. It sort of
That's great.
Yeah.
It's a good tool, a great medium to have as well. Absolutely. And it was perfectly what I was looking for at the time, because I'm in Toronto, still in Canada, and this is my first location abroad.
Right.
And I do remember feeling a lot of, identity crisis, or deep questions about who I was and what I wanted out of life. And you start getting into all these deep questions, and I was like, but it's not possible that I'm the only one out there going through.
Yes, exactly.
So where are these people, and how can I talk about it? And I think a book is also very nice, because this is very personal and intimate. So sometimes going on social media, you're not there yet, but through the book, people were very candid, and you can read about honest experiences and
Yeah, you're right. They are real life experiences. Yeah, and as you say, common. And how many expats are there in the world now? How many people choose to move? And again, I think that's maybe the difference. In the previously, you would sort of move for your job, whereas now I think people move for a lifestyle and then find a job afterwards. So maybe it's changed a little bit, and the world is much more accessible as a whole.
For sure, absolutely.
So, yeah.
There are so many reasons to go abroad. Absolutely. Still sometimes following a partner, but also absolutely so many more people deciding to live abroad, whether it's for their career, or a little bit like it was for me, deciding to move abroad first and then getting into a career there and looking for a job there. So there's so many different scenarios. Absolutely. And on that topic of job and your career, I'm referring to my experience, which is in only one country, but again, you're so rich of different experiences, and I would love to hear about these other places where you've been. But so I imagine that sometimes, whether it's about the cultural codes, having an accent, or not always understanding the other language easily, the native language of the country, not having a network as well, these that can potentially make it a little difficult for your career, whether you haven't found a job yet, or you're trying to change your career abroad, or your spouse following. Like, there's all these scenarios where maybe you're not fully set and you're trying to thrive professionally abroad, and there are all these little added hurdles compared to maybe what you would experience in your own country. So I was wondering if you have, because of all your experiences, if you have any advice, like how to try to make as much as possible an asset of being an expat, and how you've tried over these different times to make your career progress.
Yeah. Oh gosh, huge question. I think. Oh well, I think there's a couple of things. I think if you have a profession, so if you're a lawyer or a vet or something, it is hard to be flexible. So I don't. So I can say, oh, but I go to a country and I got involved in all the sort of the business groups, and I did some event planning for like the American Chamber of Commerce, and then from that I did some for the Aussies, but and then set up a telephone helpline, and then did a little bit of counselling, and then did events, so I could be flexible, and I was happy to be flexible. But my gosh, there were so we arrived in Sweden, and I couldn't, what would you call it? Sort of get my master's psychology degree, counselling degree transferred so that I could practice legally in Sweden without sort of sitting exams and speaking Swedish. which I didn't do, and I still can't do. And so I remember, you know, my husband would be going off on these cool business trips, and I would be sitting at home being like 30 something, I've got my master's degree and I'm watching underwear. You know, this is so unfair. What kind of life is this? You know, and really wallowing in sort of resentment and self-pity and thinking this, you know, and then you wake up one morning and think, hang on, who's doing this? It's me. I'm putting these pressures on myself. So this is how our situation is. We live in Sweden. It is spectacular. What else? What will be my purpose? So you know, actively choosing to put away the being disgruntled at washing your, you know, doing all the washing, and going out and finding your own purpose, and whether that's creating your own purpose or and so I did a fair bit of stuff online, because I could, and that, you know, that kept up my sort of counselling thing, and from that the book thing came. So yeah, so it's, did I answer the question?
For sure, absolutely. There is no magic answer, but honestly,
yeah,
that reminds me of what you told me back in 2019, and honestly, it really stuck with me. And I think it's actually almost a magic answer. It's very helpful. It's that you can't control what's happening around you, and I feel like you even more feel sometimes like we're out of control when we're abroad, but you can always control how you decide to react. And
so
that
funny,
actually
yes.
was quite a game changer, because I clicked that day that it's not because there is so much changing around me that I'm completely powerless. I decided on that move too, but beyond whether you decided to do it or not, once you're living it, you still always are in control of your emotions and your reaction to the situation. That's very true.
Yeah, exactly. So like I say, you can choose to be grumpy and resentful, or and the, you know, and then sort of waste your experience, or you can wake up and think, actually, gosh, this is quite cool. What will I do? And like I said, I think it's, you know, it maybe for people with professions, you know, who have followed their partners to work, it is a case of, right, we're going here for 2 years. I won't practice law for 2 years. I will take this time, and then, but then make a mental pact with yourself that, right, so I'm going to learn painting, or I'm going to take those 2 years. I'm, you know, and also I think too, a lot of it is to do with the time in your life. So Dubai, for example, has changed a lot. It used to be quite, I'd say, young to middle management. So a lot of people would come here and have families. So, you know, that desire to work wasn't as much, because they were, you know, the parent who wasn't working was looking after kids. It's kind of changed a little bit now. I mean, it's every age group, if you like. But also now lots of opportunities to work, so you can come and work in your profession here. But again, that's every country has a different, you know, allowance or capability or possibility of what you can and unfortunately what you can't do. And again, that's just being prepared. Okay, we're going to move to Qatar. I need this. Means I can't do that. Okay, be at peace with that. What can I do? What do I want to do? Which actually is another whole thing. What do you want to do? Oh. Sometimes when you have that blank canvas, it's like, oh my God, what do I want to do? I have no idea. And that's more scary than sort of being told this is your job. Go and do your job, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I can relate to that point as well, for sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of Dubai, so you've been there 16 years now, is that correct?
16 years, yeah, we have.
Amazing. So you don't really consider yourself an expat anymore, from what I'm understanding. So what is, I've never been to Dubai. I imagine some people will listening maybe have never been there too. So would love to hear about what it's like to live there.
Sure. I think Dubai, well, it has done an amazing job of marketing itself. You know, it's not for everybody. It is what it is. It is a brand new country. You know, it's 45 years old. It has, the leadership has unbelievable vision. and can make stuff happen. So they have vision and they have budget, which you know, not many countries do have, so that they can decide on something and it will be done. It's, I mean, all the sort of, it's safe, it's easy, you know, great opportunities if you choose to take them. And I guess I think having been here for so long kind of makes me feel less like an expat, but also it is such an international, I speak for Dubai, such an international city. You know, there's 10% of the population are Emirati. So 90% are not natives. So, you know what I mean? So, I've got two daughters, both at high school, and I think in a class of 21, there's probably 19 nationalities. So that is normal. You know what I mean? You would go to a barbecue and you have just totally international. I think that's cool. I mean, I just said to you earlier, I mean, you know, I don't mind it, but obviously it's going to be 50 degrees this weekend, and it's hot and humid, but we have a coastline of beach. And yes, it is very relaxed in terms of females and, you know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just think you can get swept up in that, the positive momentum. You know, you can sort of drink the Dubai juice, and a lot of people have businesses, a lot of people have side hustles, you know, and that is all becoming much easier. And yeah, there just seems to be, and whether it's to do with rubbing shoulders with others who have that same sort of enthusiasm and excitement of doing stuff and, you know, creating, whether it's making candles or whether it's having a tourist company or whether it's doing events and, you know, it's all possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So for work, one of the things that you do as you're an independent consultant and you work on project and event management. So I was wondering if you would, out of curiosity, could tell us a little bit about some of your clients or like what you do exactly.
Sure. Yeah. So when we moved here, so I was pregnant and had our first child sort of 2 months later. And then, I kid you not, standing at the door of the nursery, got speaking to another mum, and literally 2 days later met for coffee and we set up an event management company. Serious. So that was 12 years ago. And we worked together. It was perfect. You know, it gave us flexibility to have family life. And you know, and I guess that's the essence of Dubai, right? You just roll your sleeves up and you get stuff done. And so it was just her and I. Unfortunately, COVID came, and so the event industry, well, as the world was, you know, it's all sort of finished. But and again, kudos to Dubai. The licensing rules have changed a little bit again. They are trying to encourage sort of the SME or the freelance type sole trader. So I got another business license. I kid you not, 10 minutes down at the thing. They sent me in WhatsApp with my business trade license on it. And yeah, now I have sort of a consultancy, which is me, but it is a business license, so I can provide either project management services or event management services for companies legally. I think that is one thing that Dubai is very legal, and I would strongly recommend that everybody, you know, anybody who wants to sort of set up, make sure they set up. So there is VAT and there is lots of cross checks and things. But yeah, so events, all sorts of stuff. Sort of conferences for financial companies, sporting events for golf days.
Make sure you would become known so that people would come to you for their events. How did you create?
And and that's cool. And relationships are still quite important here. You know, it is quite transient. Obviously, you know, huge expat population, people come and go. So when you go online to look for a service provider, Are they still there? Does anybody know them? So yes, I think there is, and I said from the beginning, I think people like to help people. So, you know, if you have a good experience with somebody, generally you would pay it forward. And that, and you know, and that goes both ways. So,
Right.
so
Great.
yeah.
No, and I guess as a last question I wanted to ask you, out of curiosity again, so what are your next goals? What is coming next in your very adventurous and interesting life? Do you
Yeah,
have
I don't
any
know.
career goals or volunteer objective?
We every now and then we talk about it, and I'm a bit ahead in this. It's not broken here, don't need to fix it. But my husband's quite, well, we should be planning ahead. We have two teenage daughters, who I have no idea. They were both born here. They're at school here. Obviously, I have no idea what they will do. But I think for now we will get them through school, and then when they go, you know, and you're still young and fit and healthy, I would like to think there's still another posting at least, or posting. It wouldn't be a job posting, it would be us deciding, I'd love to live here, let's give it a go, let's try and find a job there and make it happen, rather than sort of, you know, wait for
Right.
for an employer to say,
Yeah.
do you
Right.
want to move here? So yeah, and be the master of your destiny.
Yeah, through your life, we can see also like the dynamic changing of the expat experience, right? You went
Yeah.
from deciding at the beginning, seeing your parents, then it was for job, and now you want the next time to also choose first the country. So you've lived also all these different dynamics of
Yeah. Actually,
what.
it was funny. We were when our time in India was cut short. So the sort of the department my husband was with was made redundant, the whole department. So then I remember literally sitting on the floor one night with a map out. Where do you want to live? What about that? Oh no, that's too cold. Oh, that one, no, that's too far away. Da, da, da. And just thinking, this is mental. Who, again, what an amazing,
Change.
cool position to be in. But then the other side, I was like, well, if we don't find somewhere, and if we don't find, you know, because we met in China, we got married in Sweden, and now I've lived in Dubai. So we haven't, my husband's English, so we haven't sort of, don't have a common home ground, if you like. So yeah, and that's just the mentality, and again, I think that is probably more the mentality now than certainly what it was.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience, and it was lovely to meet you. I will say in person, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Modern day technology, great. This is the upside of COVID, right?
Exactly, exactly. Thank you, Victoria.
Excellent.